Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of CleanTechnica's news broadcast. You read the title right. This morning we got our hands on some exclusive Tesla news. You won't find this anywhere else. Before we get to it, for anyone who is new here, the purpose of this news broadcast is to help you deal with the informational overload out there. So we aim to keep our videos at 20 minutes or less while helping you keep up with the most relevant clean tech news of the week. Let's get to it. Tesla. Just like you, I hated when the thing they put in the title didn't put near the end of the video, so we're gonna get right to it. Now you may have already heard rumors going around that Giga Shanghai will soon start producing the long-range version of the Model 3. Now we managed to find out more. First off, it's gonna be the rear-wheel drive version of the long-range Model 3. And the second thing is, these are going to be the first battery packs that are assembled at Giga Shanghai, and they will be making use of LG Chem cells. A lot of the other components of the battery, like the enclosure, the clamshells, the cooling tubes, those will be shipped from Giga Nevada. However, the cells, those come from LG Chem in China and will be assembled on the spot at Giga Shanghai. Now, here's something interesting about these LG Chem cells. Apparently, they will be making use of a slightly improved new Tesla battery formula. Now, in the past, the LG Chem cells were actually not good enough to be used for long-range packs. However, with this new formula, they're apparently slightly better than the current Panasonic cells, which also ends up explaining the 4-kilometer range increase. So you might be wondering, why doesn't Panasonic simply switch to the new chemical formula? Well, apparently they've been trying to since January. It seems that they've been so busy with ramping up production, and the two chemical formulas cannot be mixed, so they haven't had the chance to switch over to the new chemical formula, even though it's readily available to them. And you might think that with the current shutdown in progress, they might finally be able to do it. Sadly, it seems that's not the case, because this is not something that can be done with a skeleton crew. However, on the bright side, the 3s and Ys in the next months will be getting an increase in range. Now, if it's just a small increase, then Tesla might not even announce it, because that's how they did things in the past. What we know is that the LG Chem cells used to have less capacity than the Panasonic cells, and now they have slightly more capacity. Now, a part of this could also be attributed to a software improvement, so it's hard to say how much better the Panasonic cells will become. Then another tidbit of info, Tesla is not planning to produce its drive units in Gigafactory Berlin nor Gigafactory Shanghai, which is pretty curious. Then there is also that fact that Tesla is planning to produce a next generation cell, and they will most likely produce it themselves. I'm currently working on a video that goes into unprecedented detail about that. This is stuff that no other YouTube video has. Stay tuned for that in the next couple of weeks. In other Tesla news, remember how more than a year ago Tesla started work on this giant battery in South Australia, now commonly referred to as the Hornsdale Power Reserve? Well, a couple of months after that deal was made, rumors started popping up about another deal, also in South Australia, but this time for a virtual power plant, where more than 1,000 homes would get solar panels and a Tesla Powerwall, and all would be working together to balance out South Australia's pretty unstable power grid. It later turned out to be a much bigger project than was originally thought, since they're expanding it to 50,000 homes. Now, in today's news, the Australian energy market operator completed its first review of the virtual power plant, and apparently the system passed with flying colors. There was apparently one or two incidents where the system didn't behave as it was supposed to. Now, what exactly happened is pretty technical, so I would defer you to our article on CleanTechnica that has exact quotes and explanations. But suffice it to say, the issues had to do with how the system was configured. So, some updates were sent out, and this shouldn't happen again. But the positive report of the energy operator should help speed up the plans to get the rest of the 50,000 plus Powerwalls and solar panels installed. Then a third quick Tesla story. The company sent out an email to all employees that everyone will be getting a pay cut. Now this is 30% for vice presidents, 20% for directors and up, and for everyone who is still working either from home or as part of the skeleton crew keeping the lights on, they will get a 10% pay cut. Now all those that are sitting at home and are unable to work,
Those will not get a salary, but they do get to keep all their benefits and, most importantly, their job. Now, desperate times, desperate measures, but hey, as long as you still have your job, that's not bad. Audi.
According to this news, Audi turns out to be quite spoiled. It seems they're going to be using 4 different chassis designs in their vehicles. The first is the one that they jerry-rigged and was originally not intended for electric vehicles and is currently used in the Audi e-tron. Make sure not to translate that into French. The next one is the Volkswagen MEB platform that will be used for their smaller and cheaper vehicles. So the A1, the A3, the Q2, the Q3. And then the third one is the premium platform electric that they developed together with Porsche. Finally, there is Audi's J1 chassis that was developed for the Audi e-tron GT concept. Now this will be Audi's only vehicle that can be charged at a speed of 350 kilowatt. Now if you were confused by any of that, Audi and Porsche are both luxury brands that are owned by Volkswagen, hence the jointly developed platforms. This also helps explain another piece of news. Recently in Germany, several A1 Audis were registered and they were apparently electric. And this makes sense. I mean, if they're built on the MEB platform, they can be brought to the market sooner. Then in the final bit of Audi news, the company will not be making an electric Audi A8. This has something to do with the sedan sales being lower than expected. Now, what the company will do instead is make it a better plug-in hybrid electric vehicle than it was before by increasing the size of the battery. The Audi A8's current electric range is a measly 28 kilometers.
Volkswagen. This is a complicated story. Volkswagen, in a new video, is telling people that it will soon, with the ID.3, be selling an augmented reality heads-up display. Now, don't get me wrong, their HUD will be the most advanced out there, and that part is really, really cool. However, this, and this, and this, which is the augmented reality part, they simply will not be able to do. It's simply not possible with current technology, not properly at least. Just a month ago or so, I interviewed a company called Altia, and these guys, they are market leaders when it comes to creating user interfaces. The program that they make is used by all of these car manufacturers in most of their vehicles to create the user interface, and that includes the HUD. Fun fact that I learned, if you have multiple screens in a car, that's called an integrated cockpit. We discussed augmented reality heads-up displays as well. They too are working on this with their partners. And while most of it is still under wraps and they couldn't reveal too much, this was discussed as something that will come some years from now. Here's the problem. With augmented reality, calculating the surfaces and the angles at which you want to put an object for it to look good is extremely difficult. Now, on your phone, the camera and the surface of the screen is exactly the same angle at all times. Whatever the camera sees, you just need to overlay it on top of that. And that is somewhat simpler. Now, in this case, your eyes are the cameras, but the computer that needs to calculate the angles and the surfaces doesn't know what the camera is seeing. It needs a second camera to observe the first camera to calculate how and where to put this. And that is not to mention the fact that you would need a significant amount of processing power to accomplish this. Not to mention the fact that you also need a huge, more complicated projector that can put it onto a huge part of the windscreen and not just that little spot in the corner. If you have something like the Microsoft HoloLens that is attached to your head and tracks your eye movement, it's somewhat more simple. But when you have a passenger cabin and the driver, he can move from side to side, he can move his head, he can move his eyes. Tracking that and keeping it stable is incredibly difficult. And keep in mind the price, right? Volkswagen, their current generation heads-up displays, which is just a standard heads-up display, costs $600. For an Audi, that's $1,100. For a BMW, that's $1,500. And now Volkswagen already wants to do a much more advanced, larger one that can include more info, as well as an augmented reality one that goes for the entire windshield. It requires very complex monitoring and processing. Keep in mind, the ID.3, which is supposed to be the first vehicle to get this, is supposed to be a budget vehicle. It's supposed to be for everybody, but I do not see how they can achieve this at a reasonable price. And I would not call $5,000 to $10,000 reasonable. This is something I might expect on a Porsche Taycan that costs more than $200,000, but not on a $35,000 Volkswagen ID3. Think about it, it just doesn't make sense. Volkswagen, prove me wrong, but I call BS. You really should have demoed this first to journalists. You should have maybe shown a real video of this rather than go full-blown CGI. I mean, this technology, you will get to it eventually, but there's no need to promise augmented reality so soon when it's not achievable. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's awesome what you're doing with the MEB platform, with the ID3, the ID4, and all your electrification plans. Just your expanded HUD that shows more info, that is already super exciting. Just leave it at that. We really look forward to seeing that, you know? Fossil fuels. How the tides have turned. It is quite fair to say that the greed of oil companies around the world is pretty much unparalleled. Within my lifetime, the price of fuel has only gone from high to ridiculously high. However, in today's news, millions of barrels of oil are in the ocean and nobody wants them. They're not leaking into the ocean, they're just being stored there on ships. But basically, the price of oil is in free fall. And actually, the cost for storing oil is at record highs. Basically, we haven't seen a cost of storing oil this high since the crisis in 2008. Oil companies, they're in pretty big peril because even after the COVID-19 lockdown, they will now have to sell all of this excess oil at a loss and produce less next quarter. Even after the lockdowns are over, there's still a recession looming, and that threatens not only the oil companies, that also threatens all the car makers. However, the sales of internal combustion engine vehicles are more at risk than ever before. A lot more people want an EV. And if they have solar, maybe even a battery, then the recession should be a lot less stressful. I remember in 2008, a lot of people were worried about not being able to pay gas. With electricity, that's less of a problem. With solar, that is not a problem. Even in an emergency where you lose your job, if you have an EV and solar at home that you can charge for free from, then basically you could just become an Uber and Lyft driver without any kind of expenses. I mean, that's fantastic. And that was it for this week's broadcast. We hope you guys liked it, and if you did, please consider sharing it. Our news broadcast is relatively new, and if you would send it along to your friends who care about clean tech, we'd appreciate it. Giving this video a thumbs up would also help us along. Now, everything that we talk about in this video, we also try to write articles about, and the links to those, together with timestamps, can be found in the video description. Other than that, I wish you guys a wonderful weekend, and till next time, see ya.